Santa Barbara City College. Many of our audience members are members of the campus community, many are not. And regardless, our real goal here is to share with you some of the fantastic work that actually happens at the college, both in the classroom, out of the classroom, and in all of the many student services and the student community at large. So today, we're really happy to share with you some of the probably most famous of our programs. We have, for many years, the programs that we're going to be addressing today have been recognized as leaders and innovators around the state and really around the nation. And we're doing it at a time where the current pandemic has laid bare a lot of the inequalities that some folks, remarkably in some cases, hadn't previously seen or really paid attention to, or if they had, it was something that was easier to avoid. And today, what we're seeing is that the inequitable effects of a pandemic, not only the public health crisis, but the economic crisis that it has precipitated, has shown up very differently among our friends and neighbors and colleagues and different members of our community. So it's an appropriate time to talk a little bit about equity and using an equity lens in delivery of services and engagement of our communities, but also to talk about what is that map? What are those inequalities that we grapple with? This is not new in any sense to college students anywhere really, and certainly not at SBCC. But who we have with us today are two of the leaders of our campus that actually lead the programs that most directly support our students as they may deal with different kinds of struggles. So I'm very happy to introduce to you our two speakers, and we're going to turn over the floor to them in just a moment. First of all, we have Paloma Arnold. Paloma is well known to many. She has almost a 20-year history with Santa Barbara City College. She's actually a local native, Santa Barbarian, and she has served in many roles in her time with the college. She is currently the director of EOPS, Extended Opportunities Programs and Services. So if you hear the EOPS acronym throughout this conversation or elsewhere in the community, that is what it stands for. She has worked as an advisor. She's been an associate professor. She has been a counselor. And as I said, she is currently the director of our EOPS programs. I will not go into the details of what that means because she's here to do it directly. So we're going to let her do that. Some of her other background is that she has her bachelor's degree from UCLA and her master's in psychology from Antioch. So she comes from into this academic world with some academic experience elsewhere. I want to also welcome to our conversation today Roxanne Byrne. She is at this point in her career the interim coordinator of equity, diversity, and cultural competency at SBCC. And depending on how you measure, you could say she actually has a deeper history with SBCC than even Paloma, in that she started as a student in the 1990s, some time back. So currently, that position in our equity department actually oversees everything from the food pantry to CalFresh to the Center for Equity and Social Justice to the Emoji program. And again, I will not go into details because Roxanne is here to do that herself. She actually joined the staff at City College in 2006 and has served as an adjunct instructor in the early childhood education program and in personal development before moving on to the work that she does now. She herself has a master's in clinical psychology and a master's in human development, and she's currently on her way to her PhD in human development with Fielding Graduate Institute, one of our partners here in the community. So we're so happy to have you both here. And at this point, I'm going to turn over the floor, or the call as it were, to you, Paloma.
Great, thank you, Jeff. I just want to start out by saying thank you to the foundation for inviting both Roxanne and I to be here today and to share a little bit about our programs and some of the needs and challenges that we've seen our students facing year round, but especially during this highly, highly unusual time. And I also obviously want to thank the foundation for all of the support that you give our programs. It's tremendous and really helps us do the things that we do in a above and beyond way. So I'm going to start today just by talking a little bit about the EOPS program and what the EOPS program is, the services that we provide, and the programs that we have within the EOPS program. And then hand it off to Roxanne, who's going to talk about her programs as well. And then we'll talk together a little bit about some of the needs and challenges that our students are currently facing right now. So Raisa, if you don't mind going to our first slide, please. So what is the EOPS program? Some of you may have heard of EOPS before in the community, here on campus. Essentially, EOPS is Extended Opportunity Programs and Services. We are a state-funded program, so there is actually an EOPS program at every community college in California. There's also an equivalent EOP program at every CSU and most UCs as well. We are charged with providing above and beyond educational support services for both financially and academically disadvantaged students. So students must be low-income students and must face certain academic disadvantages that are set by the state of California. Our goal is to provide above and beyond support to these students. So our goal is to provide the extra resources that these students might benefit from to help them achieve their educational goals, whether their goal is to complete a certificate, a high school diploma, an associate's degree, or potentially transfer to a four-year university. Next slide. So who are EOPS students? As I mentioned, EOPS students must be verified as low-income students according to financial aid. For eligibility this current year, that's a family of 4 making less than $37,500 in Santa Barbara. And they must be first-generation educationally disadvantaged, students of color, non-high school grads, English language learners. The thing that I really want to, emphasize here is that frequently when we hear statistics or we hear data, we hear the student is a low-income student, or the student is a first-generation student, or this student is an English language learner. What I think it's really important to understand is that those are not 3 or 4 different students. That's actually usually one student who is facing all of those challenges or all of those obstacles. And that is essentially how students qualify to be in the EOPS program. And in addition to that, they must be full-time student enrolled in 12 or more units unless they're enrolled in our disability services program. Next slide, please. Within the EOPS program at Santa Barbara City College, we're actually an umbrella for several other programs that serve more specific and targeted populations. So within the EOPS program at SBCC, we also oversee the CARE program, which is a program for single parent students receiving government assistance. The CalWorks program, which is also a program that supports parenting students, but students can be married. They don't have to be single parents. And the CalWorks program is primarily a work study program, the welfare to work program. The EOPS program at SBCC also houses the Guardian Scholar program, and that program is really thanks to the foundation that we're able to have the Guardian Scholars program. Scholars program provides above and beyond services for students that were current or former foster youth. So at some point in their life, they were in the foster care system and are now enrolled in college. They can participate in the Guardian Scholars program. Historically, foster youth have very, very low success rates in college, and there's a real movement in the state of California to provide support for our Guardian Scholars or former foster youth. We also, in the EOPS program here at SBCC, have 3 summer bridge programs. These summer bridge programs, again, are primarily funded thanks to the support of the foundation. These programs are really unique to SBCC and are really some of the highlights of our program here at SBCC. So the Running Start program is for recent high school grads. Usually the Running Start program has about between 400 or 500 applications every summer. We're able to accept about 75 students. The Spark program is for new to college or single parent students who have struggled academically in the past. The Spark program provides a lot of community and support and childcare, parenting classes. And then we also have the Transitions program. The Transitions program is actually for formerly incarcerated students. We've had the Transitions program for about 11 years at SBCC, and the Transitions program is actually developing more into a year-round program. We're really fortunate to receive a large grant from the state of California to support the work that we do with the Transitions program. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that it's one of our summer bridge programs. It definitely started as one of our summer bridge programs, and is that's our still maintains our, or still continues to be one of our emphasis, but it is evolving more into a year-round program now as well. So next slide, please. So these, I'm not going to read the next 3 or 4 slides, but these are just some of the examples that the EOPS, when we say what does above and beyond services mean for students, this is essentially what it means. We provide a lot of financial support. We buy students books. We provide gas cards to commuting students. We help pay for field trips. We provide meal vouchers so they can eat on campus, school supplies. If they're accepted into the Honor Society, we pay the fee so they can join the Honor Society. We have a computer lab with free printing. We're the only lab on campus that's free printing. We loan out Chromebooks. We loan out graphing calculators. I don't know if you've been aware, graphing calculators can cost over $100. We loan out graphing calculators. Will you go to the next slide, please? We have student program advisors that provide a lot of support, resources, referrals. We have our own academic counselors. We have amazing peer mentor students that work very, very closely with our students and are a real connection between the program and our students. A lot of referrals. We were fortunate to partner with Health and Wellness, who you heard from last week, to offer personal counseling in EOPS last year. We have our own tutoring lab. Students receive priority registration. We have usually 20 to 30 workshops that we provide in EOPS every year. Then if you go to the next slide, we do various different cultural events. We have a club, field trips. We are required to do an orientation specific to our students. The next couple of slides are some of our population-specific services. So CARE, CalWORKS, and single parent students. These are some of the services that they are eligible for, including childcare. Childcare is a significant obstacle for single parent students. I don't know if anybody has young children and knows the cost of childcare in our community right now is huge, and childcare is one of the biggest obstacles for parenting students to be able to come back to school. And the foundation, again, really provides us with a lot of support so that we can help students with childcare costs. On the right is of the additional services that our Guardian Scholars receive. And then the last, these are some of the services that our Transitions, our year-round Transitions program is currently providing. We're doing learning community courses in the fall and spring semesters. One of our student program advisors, Noelle, is teaching classes in the Santa Barbara County Jail. And we have future plans to continue developing how we support the transitions and formerly incarcerated students throughout the year. What have we changed as a result? So it was not really, the picture's not really us all together. That's actually at the cave fire, but I thought that the masks were appropriate given the time. The EOPS program is the essential reason that the EOPS program works is we are a very high touch community of support for our students. Transitioning how a high touch program moves online has been very challenging, both for us and for our students. Essentially everything that we do is completely different right now. We are trying very hard to connect with students in various ways. We know that email doesn't always work. Our peer mentors are making phone calls. We're using social media. We have chat, we have email, we have our website. So we're really trying to be creative. We know that sort of intrusive ways of connecting with students tends to be the most successful for marginalized populations. So we're really trying to be creative in how we connect with our students. The last thing that I want to say that I forgot to say at the beginning is that EOPS is actually turned 50 this year. EOPS was signed into law in the state of California in 1969 as a result out of the civil rights movement. We are really the original equity program in the state of California. And the grant that was written that brought EOPS to Santa Barbara City College brought it to SBCC in 1970. So this is our 50th birthday. We had planned to have a really cool celebration in April, and that had to be sidelined. Maybe we'll do something again in the future, but we're really proud to be celebrating 50 years of serving students. So now I'm going to turn it over to Roxanne, who's going to share a little bit about the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Cultural Competency.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Byrne, and I'm the interim coordinator of Equity, Diversity, and Cultural Competency at Santa Barbara City College. Can you all hear me? Okay, sorry, there was a little pop-up on my window here. So I'm going to start by sharing this slide here, which is sort of the main banner on our website. And the reason that I wanted to share this picture is because I thought it was a really perfect transition between EOPS and the Office of Equity work. So this is an image from one of our amazing food shares, and it's a food distribution that we'll do 1 to 2 times per month on our West Campus lawn. We order, I want to say, about 6 tons of food from the food bank in a usual time. And we distribute that food to our student population and actually to some community members as well. No questions asked, students come through and they can end up taking giant boxes full of food. The person that we have right up front here is named Randy, and Randy joined SBCC as a student, and he entered through an EOPS program. He's someone that I would say was probably at very high risk, very at risk of not necessarily being able to succeed. But with the support of EOPS and the different services that Paloma had just mentioned, was really able to get rooted into SBCC as a culture and as a community. And in turn, we were able to bring him over to the equity department and hired him to work in our food pantry, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Randy is an exceptional, amazing, wonderful human, and we nominated him to be the Outstanding Student of the Year for our food pantry programs for his service to our community there. But I just thought it was a nice segue, thinking about the ways students enter, and then how do we keep them on campus to maintain their success and to reach their goals. Next slide, please. The Office of Equity, Diversity, and Cultural Competency is, we have such a long title. Most people just call us Equity. But we play a central role in college-wide planning to address student equity and success needs. The office oversees and supports the Student Equity Committee and the Student Equity Plan, and as well as working with a variety of different departments and programs, looking at sort of institutional, infrastructural ways of changing disproportionate impacts on students at SBCC. Additionally, we have a variety of different programs that the Office of Equity supports, and that's what I want to share with you right now. So wanted to highlight really quickly this concept of equity. I think it's a term that gets thrown around so often. It's a buzzword that I think can kind of lose its meaning and importance, or in many cases, people don't even know what we're talking about. So we spend a lot of time educating people about what we mean when we say equity. In the most simplest term, I think we can think of equality as supporting everyone the same way, taking a resource and distributing it equally amongst everyone, and expecting that that will rise the tide and everyone will then be successful because they've all received this resource. Equity, on the other hand, is providing support based on the context and the unique needs of individuals or groups. So for instance, if we understand that a student is being impacted, like Paloma mentioned before, by multiple different layers of barrier and obstacle, we may know then that that student will need additional resources. So you could have 2 students standing right next to one another, and we've got $1,000 to give both of them, but we know that that impact is going to be different for both of those students based on their needs. So from an equity framework and an equity lens, we're wanting to assess all of that context so that we can then address the barriers. Next slide, please. So the food pantry, I think the food pantry is one of our most glamorous and exciting things that we do in the Office of Equity. It's really a wonderful, wonderful resource. And I say that because the Real College Survey Report, which was a report that was put out by a variety of different organizations, including the Chancellor's Office, the California State Legislature, and the Hope Center. They did a survey a couple of years ago and did a report just this year that was released in March. And in this report, they found that over 50% of California community college students who were surveyed reported food insecurity. And food insecurity, under their definition, was the limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe food, or the limited ability to acquire that food in a socially acceptable manner. So for instance, without having to steal the food, without having to take the food. So not being able to access what they needed. They also found that 50% of students in the community college system worry about running out of food each month. So on a monthly basis, these students are concerned about not having access to food. And 41% skipped out on meals or cut meals each day because of financial reasons. So we know that our students in the community college system are greatly impacted by food insecurity and a lack of access to food for a variety of different reasons. So the food pantry is another thing that's actually started in EOPS. It was situated in a small little corner, off closet, I guess is the best way to say it, right, Paloma? A little closet. And it was accessible primarily to EOPS students because of where it was located. In 2017, a partnership between a few different departments, Equity took over the food pantry, situated it more centrally on campus, and opened up accessibility to the entire campus. This academic year, 2019-2020, we had over 25,000 check-ins to our food pantry service. 25,000 individual check-ins for our food pantry services. And what students get at the food pantry is they can come in each day and receive up to 4 free items of food. We partner with the food bank. We also have a wonderful partnership that we're beginning with our sustainability group on campus and pulling things from our gardens. And we also have another opportunity just prior to COVID happening where we were going to do food rescue from different businesses in town who had food that was prepared that would end up in the landfill if it wasn't used. And so we were going to go rescue that food and distribute on campus. But with our food bank partnership alone, we're distributing to over 25,000 check-ins in the school year. So it's wonderful. We also do those once a month large scale food distributions, and everything pantry related so far has been on main campus. But last fall, we started to deliver food pantry items to our cosmetology academy. And we also just developed a partnership with the Shot Center. So we'll be opening a Shot Center mini food pantry. And we also are working with our athletics department to do a little mini pantry down in the athletics area. Next slide, please. Love's Closet, formerly Tiffanys Closet, if anyone knows. We have a wonderful student who just graduated this term, and her name is Tiffany Love. Tiffany was a part of another program that I'm going to tell you about in just a minute, our Emoji program. And Tiffany went on an HBCU tour. And when she was out visiting, I believe, Spelman College, she came across a clothing closet that was primarily designed around supporting students in having different clothing needs met, as well as baby and children's items for people. So it was like a mini thrift store for students on campus that was free. Tiffany was very inspired and came back to our campus and worked as hard as she could to find allies who would support getting a closet on our campus. And what she did was reach out to Rayanne, who is going to be our new academic senate president. And Rayanne really spearheaded with her the opening of Tiffanys Closet. And it's only been a year now, but we are growing exponentially with so much support from the community. That's where we're getting all of our donations of clothes and items, but also with a lot of support from the foundation. Next slide. The Emoji program and center. So Tiffany was a part of the Emoji program, and that's how she went on her HBCU tour. We joined the Emoji program about 2.5, 3 years ago. We've been really fully functioning for about the last, I want to say, 1.5 years. Emoji is a critical resource dedicated to enhancing the cultural and educational experiences of African American, Black, and other students on community college campuses. They're expanding their reach slightly to some of the UCs as well. We are one of 62 campuses that has an Emoji program. We also have a center, and we offer a variety of different services within Emoji, including a learning community. We have courses that students can take that are Emojified, which means that they are using an Afrocentric lens in which to provide educational opportunities for students. And we have a lot of social and emotional support. We have different groups that happen. I know that several of you were participating last week with Becky Bean and Allison Bostwick when they were here. And we do a lot of partnership with the Well and Personal Wellness to make sure that we are serving the unique needs of our Black and African American students on campus. In 2015, the Campaign for College Opportunity reported that across the 3 community college the 3 California college systems, the California community colleges, the Cal States, and the UCs, Black and African American students had the lowest completion rates of all other racial and ethnic groups. And that serves to be true at SBCC as well. And so the Emoji program is vital for us to support these, again, unique equity-centered needs of the student population. Next slide. The Center for Equity and Social Justice is another wonderful center that we have on campus that is so deeply supported by the foundation, and we appreciate that so much. It's a space for education and dialogue. The picture that you see here is a local poet, Keith Marr, who we have brought a couple of times to the center, and he does poetry writing workshops and sort of speaking your truth workshops. They're very well attended, as you can see, and the students are so engaged in learning how to express their stories and their life and their needs. And so that leads into this idea of self-advocacy. We are a center that is really looking to help students who are feeling at the margins, kind of collect and find their voice, find their peers, and find ways to support the needs that they have on campus and identify what those are. We offer weekly film screenings when we're on campus and workshops, lectures, and we also serve for a lot of resource and referral. And one of those primary things that we serve in the Center for Equity and Social Justice is our CalFresh Food Assistance Program. And so we have trained several student workers, as well as I call her my program assistant extraordinaire, Alondra Lazaro Gonzalez. She is amazing, and she has really spearheaded this CalFresh program within our center. And what we do is we help students who are interested in seeing if they qualify for CalFresh benefits by helping them through the application process, which can be a little bit daunting and a little bit difficult. And so we'll help them through the process and be a checkpoint for them to come back if they're having questions or concerns about that. That community report that I talked about before, the Real College Survey report, identified that 80% of community college students who are eligible for CalFresh aren't receiving it. And that's because they just don't know, or they don't know how to apply. And so this CalFresh Assistance Program is vital, I think, to having our students access the things that they need. Student engagement and belonging and social and emotional support. I think these are the two that can get lost in the sauce a lot of times. People think, well, what's the service you're providing? And I'm going to say that one of the services that we provide that is extremely important is engagement and belonging. And that comes in the form of student groups meeting in our center. We focus on students who are feeling in some way marginalized or othered on campus, and creating a safe space for them. So we have a multitude of student groups that meet in our space and clubs that meet in our space, like MECHA, we have the Feminist Club, the LGBTQ+ club was meeting in our space, the Students Against Sexual Assault, the Filipino Culture Club. We have just a variety of different clubs who have found our space to be that empowerment space for them, where they can have events, meet one another, and commune with other people, like-minded people. I also want to just say, if we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I know that some of you are going to be familiar with that and others won't, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this idea that we have certain basic needs that we need to meet before we can get to this place of self-actualization or knowledge building or this kind of enlightened form of ourselves. The most basic need that every human has is physiological, right? We have to have air, we have to have water, we have to have food. On the next level is safety, right? We have to have shelter, we have to know that we are physically safe and emotionally safe. But the next level, right above basic, the most basic of needs, and that physical, that sense of safety, is belonging. And so belonging holds a really, really important space, I think, in this conversation about equity. People need to feel that they have sound relationships, that they have people that they can lean on, that they can connect with one another, that they feel like they have a sense that they are supposed to be on our campus, and that we will hold and nurture them in that process. And until we do those things, we're not really giving a lot of room for people to get to that next level of self-actualizing, building esteem, building knowledge base. So I just want to highlight that the belongingness piece is really, really important. And that's not just because that's what my dissertation is about. Next slide. Paloma and I think we're going to tackle some of these next few slides together. So what we both were talking about is that we know that it's clear that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted lower income and under-resourced people in general. It's all over the news. That's what we are hearing and talking about. Anyone can be impacted by COVID-19, but we're seeing that there are all these disproportionate ways that it's impacting certain populations. With the populations that Paloma and I interact with, these are the four kind of core areas that we're seeing some of that impact. So on access to basic needs like food, shelter, transportation. We're seeing a digital equity and digital access divide, which we'll talk about, employment and financial stability, and then community and connection resources. Do you want to add to that before we move to the next slide, Paloma?
No.
Okay.
So this is one of our EOPS peer mentors. His name is Rodolfo. And Rodolfo was actually highlighted by the Chancellor, Chancellor Oakley, in the state of California webinar update that he did. And one of the things that I think is really important about Rodolfo's story, his story hits a couple of the points that Roxanne just made. So Rodolfo's parents both were laid off for work. So he became the primary income earner in his household. So he is now working more than 40 hours a week. His employment is considered an essential service. Fortunately for the family, they do have one source of income, but now this young student is becoming the source of income for his entire family. So he is working now more than 40 hours a week. He's been forced to drop one of his classes and essentially learn how to do online classes with his other three. So again, you know, the ways that this is affecting students is multi-layered. Their challenges are multi-layered, but often we are finding that young students are facing or are having to take on a lot more responsibilities that they had to in the past. Rodolfo is an extremely resilient, hardworking student, and he was able to make it work, but these are no small challenges that he was facing. And we were really excited that he was highlighted in a webinar by Chancellor Oakley to the state of California. So I think if you go to the next slide, Raisa.
So there was a report that came out just a couple of days ago from the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, and they identified the top 3 challenges that students were reporting as a result of COVID-19. Higher levels of anxiety, stress, depression, and other mental distress was up, was 67% of the respondents. 41% said they were having difficulty adapting to online learning, and 40% were identifying income loss as one of their major stressors. Interestingly, I mean, I guess not necessarily interestingly, but obviously, students who were experiencing income loss were also many of the students who were saying that they were having these higher levels of anxiety, stress, depression. And income loss doesn't necessarily mean that they have lost all of their job, right? They may also have had reduction in hours. We know we've encountered many students who have had hours reduced, are just not making a living wage, are having to work multiple jobs to continue to support the lifestyle that they had before, and or additional burdens of having to support family members. So there's a huge impact that we're seeing on our students across the board. But like Paloma was talking about, what we're also seeing is the things that are impacting everyone are impacting our students sort of at heightened levels. Because if you have lost your job and now have to go be an essential worker, and you're an essential worker to support a family of 4 as a 20-year-old, that's an incredible amount of stress. Not only are you now able to support your family, but you're an essential worker who's out of the house being exposed to COVID-19 and potentially being afraid of who else you might expose in your home. We see that there's a lot of issues with transportation, and so you may be an essential worker who needs to figure out how to get to work each day because public transportation has been impacted. So there's just so many factors. Again, when we're thinking about equity, we need to kind of look contextually and look at all of the different things that are impacting individuals, not just singularly.
So this is an example. We mentioned digital equity in the first slide, and this is an example of what we're referring to. So when most people think about digital equity, they think not everybody has a computer at home, not everybody has Wi-Fi at home, and that is all true and that is correct. And this is a very clear example of the disproportionate access to technology that EOPS and Emoji students have versus the general credit population of students. But digital equity also means things like 4 members in the family trying to use one small Chromebook at the same time, or needing to be on Zooms at the same time, or trying to use a cell phone for wireless, your Wi-Fi, or a lot of our lower income families who have children in the K-12 district do get a reduced cost internet service. Well, that internet service is not the high-speed internet service that we're used to, where we can all Zoom in these meetings and somebody else is on the internet in another room. It's very difficult to Zoom and be able to hear your professors well or your teachers well. It could also mean you don't have a space to do a Zoom meeting or to do a classroom. You might have a brother or sister or a child, on your lap. So digital equity is absolutely about having access to the technology. And I really want to recognize also that City College has done really amazing work getting hundreds of students Chromebooks and hundreds of students Wi-Fi hotspots. But it also means a lot more, having earbuds so that you can actually hear without listening to what's going on around you, or having somebody sitting next to you trying to do a Zoom as well. Even having a space to be able to do an online learning, for our housing insecure and houseless students, having a space to do an online classroom is challenging. And those are, a lot of our students, when we talk about community, they would, leave the house and be at school all day long. And a lot of times they use the basic resources that we provided, like computers and access to food, access to printers, to be able to complete a lot of these assignments. And in that sense, that community and that access to technology has been lost as well. We have students in the parking lots at City College trying to access Wi-Fi. The challenges are significant for many of our students to learn to do this online. And I think that might actually be our last slide.
Just one more. So we have moved, of course, all of our services online. And one of the things when I talked about community and connection to resources, there are a variety of different things that are happening across campus, a lot of partnerships. We're continuing to do our food distributions as a drive-through. They're generally held on Wednesdays from 2:30 to 4. If there is anybody in this call who can utilize that resource, you are welcome to. And please also pass on the resource to others. So we do it from 2:30 to 4 in lot 5-1, which is the lowest level of that covered parking structure. You don't have to be a student. We will give you food as long as we have it in stock. And we're also providing a lot of resources for students to have kind of virtual hangout spaces, virtual connection and resource spaces, as well as the different chats that are going on around campus that students can log in and get support. And I think that's the end of our slides now.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
Well, thank you both. So, I mean, you've covered so much ground, and it is really wonderful, and it's gratifying to see that all in one place. I know many folks on the call have some sense of what is available and the many different programs and resources that are organized on campus. But to see it in one place, even for those that are aware of a large portion of it, it's truly remarkable. So thank you both just for what you do every day. The reason we have you here, of course, is we want to share this and all those stories. I can't imagine there's anyone on this call who didn't learn something, no matter how long they've been with the college, or if they're brand new to the community, something about what's available. I have just a couple of questions, and I know we've covered a lot of ground, so I don't want to belabor this, but there's a couple of points you made, and I think they connect back to this moment very, very well. The first one is, and Roxanne, I believe you named the Hope Labs and the Hope Center. And of course, we work a lot with them to measure the problem really as much as anything. They also offer resources. But some of those data points that you reference, I know they shock people. Mm-hmm. And they shock people because there's just not this general awareness, I think, in the community about the fact that community college students in particular, college students in general, which are a reflection of our larger society, in this moment where inequality has been growing for 40 plus years, where we've ended up today is really quite stunning when you look at it through the lens of equity and you think about how many students self-report housing insecurity, food insecurity. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that affects your work and your strategy? You know, a student who may be experiencing this may not actually be aware that they are in a majority even in their challenge. And of course, the stigma that can go with that, or just the sense of being isolated. Can you talk about how those really overwhelming statistics inform your strategy and your work?
Sure, absolutely. And one thing I want to mention is that prior to COVID-19 impacting all of us, we were in the process of building our Real College Hope Survey for Santa Barbara City College. And so we had hoped to launch it towards the end of this spring semester, but we're unable to do so. And so we are in the process right now to do a launch of the Real College Hope, Project Hope Survey for our campus community in the beginning of fall semester. So we should get some real hands-on data about what our students are experiencing, which I think will be really beneficial. And that will focus primarily on housing and food insecurity. So we'll get a pretty good picture of what our students are experiencing. But I think what you're talking about, Jeff, and I was in a webinar yesterday, and it really struck me because I can relate so much to what this person was talking about. So at our food pantry, for instance, or in our CalFresh Assister program, something that we have found is that we develop relationships with our students. So students come to us and there's this sense of need, and there's this sense of finding a resource that is unbarriered. We do as much as possible to remove any barriers to the services that we provide. And so over time, we build connection. And as we build connection, they start to tell us more about their stories. And they start to tell us more about the things that they are in need of. And it paints this fuller picture of a student to us. And that's what really informs kind of what we need to do next. So we have had a more informal, I guess, qualitative sort of approach to, or anecdotal approach recently on campus in terms of food pantry services, housing insecurity services, and some of the broadening services that we provide based on what students are telling us is absent or missing or challenging in their life. And so I think that, coupled with the data that we will get from doing the surveys, will be really beneficial to our students. And I think Paloma probably very similarly, you know, as we are relating to these students and connecting with them, we're learning more about what they need. Would you agree, Paloma?
Absolutely. We do surveys pretty regularly with a lot of our summer bridge programs with students as they're exiting the program. And then again, just speaking and developing relationships with students, it allows us to understand what the students' needs are. Having students working in our office is also a critical way that we can, you know, really understand what the challenges are that students are facing. Through one of those surveys is actually how we developed the meal voucher program in EOPS, where we provide meal vouchers for students to eat in our cafeterias on campus. The other thing kind of along those lines that you were mentioning, I think a lot of times when people think about Santa Barbara, they think about the affluent community that Santa Barbara is. And so seeing those numbers of like $25,000 check-ins for students at the food pantry is really eye-opening. Along those lines, our EOPS program here at SBCC is actually one of the biggest in the state. So we serve usually between 12 and 1,300 students each semester. And that's something that a lot of people don't really realize, is that in this affluent community, there's actually a huge community of people in need. And oftentimes, because we're known to be an affluent community, the populations of people that are more in need tend to be marginalized even more. But we are actually in the top 20 in the biggest EOPS programs in the state of California. So,
yeah, can I jump into,
go ahead.
Paloma, something that you brought up was the meal vouchers. And so again, if we think about the impact of COVID-19 on our students, meal vouchers are something that a lot of our students in EOPS, as well as the Emoji program, rely on, and in some cases might be one of the only meals that they are guaranteed in a day. And with our campus being closed, that vital resource is gone. Just completely gone. They don't have access to that anymore. So we are seeing a really drastic uptick in our students reaching out to us and saying, I don't have food. I don't have this basic resource that I need, and how might I be able to access that kind of on a daily basis, right? Because we need daily access to food. And so that's something that we have been brainstorming and trying to figure out, and how do we redirect funding? What are options that we have in order to provide you know, grocery card vouchers, increasing our food distributions, working with our community partners to have locations that we can tell students that they're able to go to every day. But we can also expect in many cases that if someone is really drastically under-resourced with food, they may also be very under-resourced in transportation. So saying, here's 16 different places you can go in Santa Barbara to get food, from Goleta to Isla Vista to, you know, Carpinteria. Well, again, that's a privileged approach to providing food access.
Absolutely. Well, on that point, actually, so this connects to the data question of just the sheer overwhelming statistics of the need. And to your point, Paloma, about the fact that there's a common misconception about our community. We certainly run into it all the time in the foundation, especially when we're talking to a foundation or a partner or a donor out of area. The assumption is, well, you're fine, you're in Santa Barbara, but I'm talking about those other places. And of course, I love to have that re-education moment where I say, well, actually, no, let me paint the picture for you. But on that front, with our programs, you've both been in this work a while, and to my mind, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, the public's understanding of, say, the free breakfast and lunch programs at elementary schools and high schools have started to penetrate, and people understand that that may be the only meal that someone gets. And of course, here at our community college, people don't understand. I think it's newer to them. And with that overwhelming statistic, what has been that evolution over the last, let's say, 20 years that you've both been engaged in this work, where we've gone from an educational institution to an educational institution plus a full social services program across every possible need? What's Can you reflect just sort of on what you've seen change in your time in this work?
I think it's exactly what you said. And it's hard to know whether the changes have come from a greater awareness in the community and within our students, or if the times are changing and the needs of the students are changing as well. I think that they're, you know, even from when I started here back in 2000, the needs of the students are heightened. There are a lot more mental health needs. And I think students are also a lot more comfortable now, or we're moving in the direction of being more comfortable, of asking for help, of asking for what they need, of confiding in us of what their real challenges are, not just in school and in the classroom, but at home, and how those are affecting them in school and in the classroom. So I feel like it's sort of a combination of all of the above. There's definitely more of an awareness in the community. There's more of an awareness on campus. And I think that students' needs in it of themselves are changing as well, as is their ability to reach out and ask for help.
Well, Roxanne, did you want to add to that?
No, I would agree with what Paloma's saying. I think it's a combination of both of those things. I also think that, you know, from an equity perspective, it's our job to consider that we are an open access institution. That's why I love being in the community college system, and that's why I don't want to be anywhere else. We are the access point to broadening an individual's mind, their opportunities, their career trajectory. We are that place, and that's a very special thing. And with that comes everything that comes along with open access. We are getting people from all different levels of educational background, language background, cultural, heritage backgrounds, as well as financial capacity. And so I think from an equity perspective, it's our job to serve, to kind of comprehensively serve the whole student. We can't just bring someone in as a person at a desk to learn something, because in that we will lose so many individuals, and it privileges only those who have everything resourced and available to them. And I know, Paloma had talked about having student workers and how that really informs a lot of EOPS kind of awareness of who the students are. And I can say that that's absolutely true in our program as well. Having student workers who are always from the populations that we serve is a real insight into their lives and their realities and what the things are that can get in their way. And I will often have students of mine come to me and say, I can't ask anybody else this question. Nobody in my family knows this. No one can help me through this process. I think last year I sat with 3 students who were getting ready to transfer, and we did their housing application together. We chose which dorm they wanted to be in. We talked about new student orientation. That's what I did with my own children. So I served that same capacity and role, because for the students that I was working with, that didn't exist in other spaces. And so I think that, in my perspective, that is our job, to look at the whole person, not just the student who's trying to achieve a specific goal.
Thank you. Well, there's a couple of questions in the chat that I do want to throw out, and then I know we're going to need to probably close here, although we could do another day and a half on just these issues. So I really appreciate it. Maybe we'll bring you back. This is an open-ended invitation. One is a straightforward question around support, but some of you mentioned the various types of supports that you receive for the programs. Jean Kaplan had typed in, how can I support Love's Closet? Do you want to talk just a moment about how some of these programs, a community member might be able to support them?
Sure, really quickly. Right now, because we are closed, we are not accepting any actual hard donations in terms of items. So once we get to a place where we're going to be able to reopen again, I will definitely send out information. I'll send that to you, Jeff, so you can pass along to others. But absolutely, we are always open to getting monetary donations to the foundation directed towards Love's Closet or the food pantry, or any of our programs can be very helpful.
Thank you. And my colleague Gretchen Hewlett, many of you know, is typed in the question. And I thank you, Paloma, for your chat answer. But I do want to toss this out to everyone. We're in the midst of this moment where there's so much unknown, especially around the budget piece of this. We've just heard the May revise last week for those of us that are political nerds like myself who listen to things like that. You heard the governor really outline his thinking on how California deals with the $54 billion budget deficit and how much of that is going to affect public education. Do you have a sense of where you stand? I know the governor made a commitment verbally to try to hold harmless EOPS and these kinds of programs, but we all know that it's a changing landscape day by day. What's your sense of what's ahead for equity and EOPS programs, budget-wise?
Like I said in the chat right there, for now, the governor has made a commitment to continue our existing funding levels for the EOPS program, the CalWORKS program, and the DSPS, which is the Disability Services Program. So we're hoping that once the final budget is approved, that commitment remains intact. We'll see.
We will.
We are hopeful. Fortunately, sort of hopeful. Fortunately, the EOPS statewide has a very, very strong voice and a very strong ability to advocate for our students, and in the Chancellor's Vision for Success, supporting closing the achievement gap is one of his #1 priorities. So we're hoping that he will continue to fund the programs that actually do that work.
Not so cheerful on my side.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So our equity programs at SBCC, the programs that I spoke about specifically, are primarily funded through our student equity and achievement funds, which are taking a pretty dramatic hit. So outside of the foundation support that we get, primarily our funding is coming from C. So the call that we were just in before this, Paloma and I was, taking massive notes and trying to figure out what do I cut? And that's a horrible, I think, place to be in, especially when we are seeing the dramatically increased needs of our students right now from an equity perspective. For me to have to figure out how are we going to balance this and what is that going to look like moving forward? So, of course, I think equity remains a really important and prioritized topic at Santa Barbara City College and in the state, but the funding to support those initiatives is what is of great concern.
Well, thank you both for all the work you do, and I know in both cases with relatively few resources, and you certainly stretch those to make the most of them. I do want to give you both a chance. We're at a little past an hour at this point, but I do want to give you both a chance for a final word to tell anybody who's still with us, and most are, what you want them to know. Is there a contact number? Is there something they can do? Is there something they should know? So Roxanne, I'll toss it to you first. Any final words of wisdom before we close today?
Okay, I think I'm wisdomed out. I can give you my email, and I'll reply tomorrow. So you can, I think anyone from SBCC, but others, you can reach out to me, RM Byrne, BYRNE, at sbcc.edu. You can also go to our website. So if you just Googled SBCC Equity, you'd come up on our pages and you'd find my contact information there and some other info that we have. And I just want to thank everybody who showed up today. You being here shows your commitment to serving our students as well. And if you are interested in getting involved, we are always looking for people who want to help at our food distributions, who are interested in supporting our students in different ways. And of course, please, consider making a donation to the foundation on behalf of any of our programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. Paloma, the final word?
I would just echo everything that Roxanne just said. And if anybody's interested in learning, our EOPS website is sbcc.edu/EOPS. Super simple. My contact information is on there, along with all of the advisors and counselors in EOPS, and they're the ones who really do a lot of this on the ground work with our students. So feel free to reach out to myself or any one of us in the program. I know we'd all be happy to provide any more information. And thank you very much to the foundation again for inviting us and for all the support that you give us to continue to run our programs.
Well, thank you both so much. Thank you to Paloma Arnold, our Director of EOPS at Santa Barbara City College, and to Roxanne Byrne, who is the Interim Coordinator for Equity, Diversity, and Cultural Competency at SBCC. A lot of love and respect coming right now to you through the chat box, and I can see it. In fact, votes already to bring you back, so we may just have to do that. Thank you everyone for joining us. These COVID conversations are a new experiment for us, clearly one that we're going to continue. We have a couple of upcoming programs from faculty over the next 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for those. And then this is being recorded, this will be edited and uploaded to our site in the next couple of days by our fabulous colleagues at the Foundation. So again, thank you all so much on behalf of the SBCC Foundation and Santa Barbara City College, and we will hopefully be with you all next week. Thank you.